switching in English. I'm very glad and honored to have you, all of you here with me. And I will start this conversation with Mr. Antonioadis. The EU's omnibus package raises the reporting thresholds. How do you see this change affecting companies in general and more specific SMEs?
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here among distinguished experts to discuss something that is at the heart of the Europe's sustainable transition. So I would like to clear some things up related to SMEs and the omnibus. You know, SMEs is not a side story. SMEs are actually the heart of the Europe system. They represent 99.8% of the total European businesses, if you take out, of course, the financial sector, and they account for 65% of the total employment. This story in Greece is even stronger. We have 99.9% SMEs in our systems and 84% of the total employment. And actually, based on the last report from the European Commission, Greece is expected to have in 2025 one of the highest percentages of increase in the number of SMEs. So it's expected to be around 3.2%, 3.1%, while the European average is 1.2%. So you understand that the SME, this engine is getting stronger and stronger, and especially in Southeastern Europe. And it's really critical, this discussion about threshold, sustainability, and SMEs. Now about the omnibus, of course, you all know that the first part of the omnibus package, the Stop the Clock Directive, was adopted back in April. This was basically giving a postponement for Wave 2 and Wave 3 companies for 2 years, for 2027 and 2028 respectively. The second part of the omnibus, which is the most critical and will change the thresholds, is currently under discussion, and we expect the final agreement probably end of the year, early 2026. Now, why this is also very critical? There are different discussions across the European institutions. The European Commission suggested the threshold to be for large companies with 1,000 employees. The European Council suggested a new criterion, a financial criterion, large companies, 1,000 employees and 450 million turnover. The European Parliament, the Legal Affairs Committee, suggested even higher, 3,000 employees, and 450 million turnover. So you understand there are currently many discussions that will narrow down the scope of CSRD. No matter what, they will definitely narrow down something around 80 to 93% of the total scope, of the initial scope of CSRD. Specifically, just to have an example for Greece, for the initial CSRD scope, we were talking about around 1,000 companies. Now, with the new updated scope, we're talking about 50-ish, somewhere there. So you understand that the meaning of SME is changing. So when we talk now about SME and sustainability, we don't only talk about the traditional family businesses, we talk also about many mid-caps and large companies that maybe they have hundreds or thousands of employees, but they will remain outside the scope. So we need to redefine what we mean by the SME. Now, what is the impact for them? The immediate impact will be less cost. You know, less time and effort invested in ESG procedures, like reporting, like data collection, like assurance. But less regulation, of course, doesn't mean less expectation. The banks and the rating agencies will still require data to assess the credit risk, to assess the green finance eligibility, and the customers, the large customers, will still require data for their own assessment, because probably they report under CSRD. So we have a movement, a shift from a legal official obligation to something that will be in the contract clause. Like our colleague from Lambda said, they already include that in the procurement process.
Okay, Mr. Dobson, big or small, why are materiality assessments important for firms or SMEs to consider?
That's a good question. Also also very similar to what I wanted to be articulating, and I hope I was able to articulate in that last presentation. I think materiality assessments beyond also the scope of coverage that is needed, or let's say part of the omnibus package. Materiality assessments inherently is to articulate to you and to your business standard operating procedures. What is important for me to operate? And I think importantly, it's also materiality assessments, not looking solely at your direct operations, but it's also your reliance on the supply chain, your tier one material suppliers, absolutely. But it was also articulated in the earlier panels, let's say risk management and considerations for, there was an example of child labor in your supply chain, which may not be a tier one supplier, but maybe tier two, tier three, tier four, amongst others, nevertheless has an inherent impact on your company's bottom line. Also just the normative aspect of doing business the right way, of course. But nevertheless, that reputational risk solely would have a financial impact in addition to a double materiality impact. So that is a single example of an important point that we would need to be considering in materiality assessments for core inputs into your own business. But there's also going to be the look at, say, the regulatory requirements on carbon border adjustment mechanism. This is going to be looking at your carbon emissions intensity and who you're supplying from if they are outside of Europe and they do, let's say, having more emissions intensive practice to deliver said good or said widget to you as an operating manufacturer, whatever that may be. That cost is going to change. That cost is either going to be raised on you or the cost is going to be raised on the supplier. That is going to inherently impact your bottom line again. So I use financial terms, I'm talking in dollars, euros, whatever that may be, but this is the important conversation that we are doing now today when you discuss with your CFO. Sustainability, not for sustainability's sake. Sustainability for normative business practices, absolutely, but it is also for the absolute growth trajectory of ourselves. So opportunity side, which is inherently in the CSRD articulation, but risk management is critical important. And this is what a materiality assessment as a step one illustrates to your business and helps you articulate that value in storytelling to your executive leadership and to your board members, which, as I'm sure we are all similarly experienced on, may or may not be the easiest to get significant adoption in certain practices that you may wish to articulate. So a materiality assessment grounds your initial sustainability practices or business practices in data and research, which may be more likely to be adopted by your own internal leadership teams.
Mr. Papadopoulos, what are the main challenges in writing a report and what are the opportunities? You're a company that publishes reports. Have you noticed a difference in how investors, banks, and stakeholders in general treat you?
Allow me to start with a remark on sustainability. I believe this room is seriously undercooled. I don't know how everyone feels, but for every 1 degree Celsius we raise the thermostat, we reduce our energy consumption and hence our CO2 emissions by 4 to 6%. So perhaps the air conditioning guy could raise a bit the temperature. Now,
I have noticed already.
That's, sustainability in practice. Disclaimer number one. In my civilian life, I'm for 28 years now a professor on energy systems working on energy efficiency and renewables. So please don't get me wrong. I have worked towards sustainability all my adult life, more or less. Disclaimer number two, we are not a small enterprise. Yes, we have roughly 340 people and a turnover of 85 million, but we still suffer under the implementation of all the lots of regulations on sustainability. So, did we get any wiser? Now this is the 5th year we'll be publishing a sustainability report. And to start with the negative aspect, it's a hell of a problem to have a recurring demand for data, for the sustainability report, for the carbon footprint analysis, obviously for the financial results, for the shareholders asking for this and that. So we have with us here the head of the sustainability department of the company. Only she knows how she handles it. And those recurring demand for data is really a problem. Then we have also the use of indices and indicators which are sometimes really not meant for companies that, for example, are in the water business. They don't make sense. And it costs a lot of time and money to try to work the way around it. On the positive side, having to fight our way through this jungle sheds some light onto aspects of our operational life that would otherwise remain in the shadow. in a company that is fairly big and has to operate a critical infrastructure, under normal conditions prevails the routine of keeping the business running. So having once a year the pressure to investigate some of our operational aspects which are not first-line priority is one of the good side effects of doing this.
Okay. Mr. Antoniadis, speaking for Omnibus, what are the broader risks for the sustainability agenda if SMEs and some large entities, as you said, are excluded from reporting requirements?
So there are definitely many risks. I will briefly mention three. So the first one is the visibility gap. As we said, if 80% less companies end up reporting, the visibility that we have in a huge share of the Europe real economy footprint and its emissions, its workforce, its supply chain will vanish. So investors, regulators, policymakers it will be much more difficult for them to track progress and to have comparable data to work with. Also, it will weakens, the feedback loop that allows the capital markets to reward the companies that they invest in green projects and that they have more resilient business models. We did a survey back in May for the first year of implementation at Solcro, and we found out that between the 4 systemic banks, the reported green asset ratio was only 2%. I'm 100% sure that if the banks had available data from SMEs and from large companies, EU taxonomy-related data, from their portfolios, these green asset ratios would be much higher. And also there is another more environmental climate change risk related to that. According to World Economic Forum, 40% of the global pollution in OECD countries comes from SMEs. And at the same time, SMEs in most sectors, except for maybe cement industry or transport, they account for 70 to 90% of the total emissions. So even if these SMEs, they fall outside of the mandatory scope, they remain, at the heart of the Europe's decarbonization plan. And big, large corporations, they need data and actions from their SME suppliers in order to achieve their own net zero targets. So this is risk number one. Risk number two, two-speed market. So maybe we'll have a risk that we'll create within Europe a market of two speed. So we have some companies that they are obliged to report. They put money in that. They put money in clean processes. They put money in ESG reporting. And some others that they don't have to do anything. For me, this is definitely unfair. And it hurts also the institutions of the European Union and the credibility of the long-term goals. It's good, of course, to have some simplified standards, but definitely we don't want to reward less standards and less, let's say, effort from the companies. And the final one is the credibility. So, if with all these updates, we have the European Union changing thresholds, changing the timelines and stuff. And we have what is called by many companies one regulatory whiplash. So we have companies that they don't have to do anything to compete with companies that they are doing something even preliminary, before the regulation passes. And because of this, from now on, the companies will hesitate to put money and effort in new systems, in reporting, in new data tools before a final policy is implemented. So these three things, for me, I would say, are the most important, because at the end, companies, what they need from policymakers clarity and consistency.
Thank you very much. Mr. Dobson, what steps should SMEs consider when considering sustainability reporting disclosure, and what is the benefit and cost of doing so?
Another good question. Step one, materiality assessment. Figure out what's important for your business. That's critical, and that's going to always be the case. I think step two, as I mentioned, there's a lot of organizations here today that either help you conduct analysis on a carbon footprinting or an ecosystem impact assessment or environmental impact assessment, or the reliance on key services, whatever that may be. There is additional services that help there. Obviously, they're also in your own internal teams with your own internal experts will be able to contribute to this as well, if not do that themselves. So basically being able to collect, let's say, you don't have to collect thousands of data points. It's more looking at what is most material for your business today and starting from there as a foundation. It doesn't have to be, so if our assessment, we look at 1,000 data points when we measure a company's sustainability profile because we deem these to be material for a sector. But similar to what was mentioned earlier, it's also, maybe not all of these are related to a water company or a utilities company, specifically in, let's say, non-hydro renewables. So there's always going to be, starting with step one as a materiality assessment to be most critical. I would also look at who are my buyers. Are my buyers, is it B2C or is it B2B business? Because if my buyers are within Europe, then I'm obviously going to be faced with reporting requirements that my buyers are going to have to similarly address, which is what was just mentioned. Obviously, buyers, big players, regardless if you as an SME is going to be exposed to public reporting based on a compliance or a CSRD type initiative, the larger players, your buyers, are similarly going to have to be reporting on it, and they will be asking for it. So it's stewardship and engagement from a corporate buying perspective. But then think about the financial institutions, as was similarly mentioned. They're also going to be similarly asking for this information. Maybe it's emissions intensities, which typically be more of the easier to calculate type metrics, but also inherently material across all businesses. These are going to be asked by, let's say, majority of your investment management teams. Investor relations teams are going to have to be well aware of this information. This was also mentioned that when Sean Kidney was speaking earlier, in the US, for instance, a lot of these asset managers, they're not stopping their sustainability, let's say, sustainability business practices. They're just not screaming about it. This is inherent. This is the business case of sustainability, the dichotomy that I'm trying to get rid of. They're inherently aware that this is material. So no matter what, they're going to similarly be evaluating you the same way. So step one, conduct materiality assessment. Step two, start identifying those core metrics that you can start to collect. It's going to be a journey, and I know that's a cliche to say, but it's going to be a multi-step process, and there are a lot of say, external organizations to collaborate with you here, and also my team, for instance, works on a free basis with this. We want to conduct business development in collaboration with the organizations, see why is carbon emissions material to your business? Why is pollination material to your business? Why should I look at physical risk? So I'd say that would probably be my first two steps, but also recognizing, say 36, let's say major OECD countries are already adopted ISSB or relations to ISSB type global reporting requirements. So if we're anyways looking at global reporting requirements at ISSB amongst many of the others I had articulated earlier, there's a lot of similarities with CSRD and other, let's say, regional or European-wide sustainability disclosure requirements. It may not come today, but it's going to come sooner or later. And then, let's say, pre-preparedness to have these metrics already on hand will enable you to have, let's say, more transparency with your investor relations teams, capital markets, but also to, say, identify what is the most material to your business and, say, address the risk management and also achieve the opportunities.
Mr. Papadopoulos, what is your comment on the continuous changes in the regulatory framework?
It's thrilling. It's thrilling, isn't it? I mean, it keeps us busy. I understand that it is very good for guys who are working as consultants or supporting companies, but for the business as such, it's not exactly fun. I understand the reason that one has to adapt the framework to the geopolitical and economic conditions, but some things should be perhaps considered at a more relaxed pace. Let me give you an example. I think it was mentioned by a plenary speaker in the morning, energy efficiency in buildings. When the first Energy Performance of Buildings Directive was issued in 2002, it was a document of about 30 pages. The latest recast, issued last year, is about 180 pages. And there were three recasts, so this is the fourth version, within 22 years. Do you think that buildings have become 4 times more efficient over those 22 years? And what about the building cost? Back to the water business. We have a very strict framework on water quality, and this is good so, and this is going to get tighter, including also water reuse. We will get a very, very tight framework on the wastewater treatment. It's going to be mandatory by 2030, and it will need a lot of work and investments to achieve the standards demanded. We have the national law, which is the Energy Efficiency Directive harmonization, and then on energy audits and improvement of energy efficiency. If you put on top of that changing requirements on matters linked directly or indirectly to sustainability every couple of years, it's crazy. One example, until now we were obliged to produce a carbon footprint analysis annually, which is fine. We have been working in the university on that for 20 years, so it's really good. What was the latest development? This was a national requirement. It's not enough to produce a CFA for the carbon footprint analysis for the company. No, you have to produce one for every single part of the company that has different environmental permission. Does it make sense? Absolutely none. It adds work, cost, and brings nothing towards a more sustainable environment. So perhaps one should consider, and that's my final comment, the Pareto principle. For those of you who don't remember it, 80% of the consequences are caused by 20% of the causes. If you want to achieve covering the remaining 20% of the consequences, you'll probably have to waste huge amounts of effort, money, and energy to a doubtful result. So something's going wrong there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Antoniadis, even if many SMEs and some large entities are no longer obliged to report under CSRD, they will still face pressure from larger companies in their supply chains to provide sustainability data, as you mentioned. How they can actually prepare for this reality?
So that's true. They definitely will receive questions from other companies in the value chain. So they shouldn't wait. They should need to act. So they are prepared and they get the reward from that. I will mention 3 steps that they can take. The first one is stop replying and start reporting. So you receive, especially for the SMEs, you receive tens or hundreds of questionnaires. Stop replying to each questionnaire and start building your own report. It doesn't need to be something complicated, something long. You just you can just use your utility bills, your waste, your HR data. You all have this information. So start building something, keep it simple, and based on this, you will be able to reply to all the questionnaires every year that you receive. Number 2, pick the right framework. I mean, there are hundreds, tens or hundreds of frameworks out there. Me personally, I would suggest the VSME, which was proposed by the European Commission. And why is that? Because all your partners in the supply chain that are large corporates and they are reporting under CSRD, they are familiar with this. Of course, GRI, SASPs, they're pretty fine. But it's very important to have a common language. It's not the point to become, expert overnight on the sustainability, especially for an SME. The point is to have a common language and discuss with your partners. And last point is ask for help. If you're an SME, and definitely you have questionnaires coming from clients, you need to go to these clients and ask for help. They are already gone through this process. They have done this journey. They know what are the mistakes. They have some platforms. And their success depends on you. If you don't have the right data to report, they cannot also report their own impact on environment, on social, and on governance things. So, in short, I would say, with everything in life, don't wait to have something perfect. Start small, pick one right framework, and ask for help.
Baby steps are better than no steps. Mr. Papadopoulos, what does sustainability mean for ATHEX, and what goals do you want to achieve in the coming years, knowing that you have a very strong social impact and manage a social good?
Okay. Obviously, when you are a water and sanitation services wastewater treatment provider, the ultimate goal is to manage in the most effective way water as a resource in its whole cycle: water supply, water distribution, wastewater collection, wastewater treatment. And I think we are quite aware of it, that water is a commodity in short supply. So we have to do it efficiently and effectively. More specifically, we have set as a goal to reduce the water footprint by 30% by 2030. I think we will achieve this goal. In other words, using less water to provide the same water to the consumer. We had set a goal to reduce our carbon footprint by 50% by 2030. Actually, we have already reduced our carbon footprint by almost 70%. So we're in a good way on that. To maintain the very high standards of quality, because obviously this is the highest importance, and to do this in a way that ensures that water will remain reasonably priced, because it's a social good, but it has to be priced, and it has to be reasonably priced. And to do this, our governance must be, both in administrative and financial terms, sound. So I think these are the main goals that we have set for the sustainability of the company. We are a state-owned enterprise, though we are listed on the Athens Stock Exchange. We are operating in a regulated monopolistic environment, which means the flexibility is limited, either when it comes to governance or when it comes to increasing revenues. We don't want to sell more water, to be honest. We want to sell more water, less water per capita and more water in absolute terms, because that would be reducing the water footprint. We don't want to make huge profits, because this would endanger the raison d'etre, which is being a basic commodity provider, but we want to have a solid profit. And we want to do this by remaining, let's say, a progressive state-owned enterprise, both in terms of its day-to-day operation and its long-term perspectives.
Thank you very much. And for conclusion, Mr. Dobson, can you give us a taste? What is SSP Global Sustainable One seeing in market trends of disclosure, and how do you work with SMEs today?
Okay, also a great question. I quickly want to just address an example on the water topic. Obviously, I think we recognize that water is material to almost all businesses, also to human life, nature, capital, whatever that may be. If I think about, and I want to talk about for this like homogeneous business assets, maybe you don't have too many assets yourselves, maybe it's 1, 2, 3 locations. Mining obviously requires a ton of water to conduct business. Agriculture requires a ton of water to conduct business. Data centers require a ton of water to conduct business for the cooling and the maintenance of these facilities. So water stress today inherently is risky to today's business, but also for tomorrow's business. So the work that ATHEX is doing is critically important to business. But what I want to highlight to everyone else is when you're looking at building a new asset or conducting assessments on your existing assets and your existing footprint, run an assessment. It's like, okay, what is the resilience of water access for my asset today versus in 10 years and 20 years in the life cycle of the asset that you rely on? Givaudan, a Swiss firm, let's say working on, say, luxury colognes, but also on cleaning materials, recognized that they had 20% of their assets are located in water-stressed areas, and they inherently need water. So what initiatives did they take to immediately facilitate this? They started collecting rainwater in these locations. They made a partnership with Pepsi to take Pepsi's wastewater. So already recognizing that it's material access to them, they're going to already be considering, how can I maintain the resilience of my access to a key ecosystem service, commodity, which we can all just use simplified terms, water. So I think that there's already inherent business examples and case studies which already to start to consider solely on looking at asset level risk. If I was to, let's say, conclude with how are clients using this information, what are we looking at, and how do we engage with SMEs? So I'd say the corporate sustainability assessment, we see a lot of which is our ESG rating from S&P Global. We see a lot of significant players in the Greek market actively participating in this assessment and getting an ESG score from us. We also see a lot of, let's say, SMEs that may not be, let's say, required to conduct an ESG rating from S&P Global, which facilitates our index inclusion. So we need to maintain a core number of companies that we always assess, coming to us voluntarily, requesting us to conduct an ESG rating on these firms so that they can, say, increase access to capital, use it for investor relations, start to identify thematic funds or active owners that, say, have biodiversity funds for which they're champion. They can start to articulate this value and can benchmark themselves to peers to get into funds that they say they may have their peers in, but they're not in. So we're starting to see a lot of that. I'd say a lot of our clients, and this was also in New York Climate Week about 2 weeks ago, water resiliency obviously being the #1 area of consideration. But even SMEs level, regardless of the size of the firm, it is the business case of sustainability is repeated time and time again. Obviously, recognition to the EOTH point is, yes, compliance is expensive and it is going to be costly, and especially when there's alternative reporting requirements or changes, that is yet another iteration of cost for the companies. But as soon as we kind of do have some significance, and once we've conducted that materiality assessment, articulating and storytelling on the value that you have already conducted for the material topics for your business, that is always going to be, say, #1 engagement that we see at S&P Global with our, say, primary clients and big asset managers that, let's say, take a lot of this data. And lastly, if you don't disclose the data, S&P will model it. A lot of other providers will model it. We will model your footprint. We will model your carbon emissions. Anticipating, I'm hoping these are right, of course, but this is what your investors are similarly using. They'll use model data. So in absence of disclosure, how transparent do you want to be with the market? Do you want to rely on, say, a third-party provider to articulate your footprint to a downstream market, or are you going to be the one that does it and, say, more accurately, I'd hope, distributes this information?
Very interesting insight. Thank you very much, all of you.